Freshman year, I went on Learning Enterprises as well, like Kaylee, to teach English in Brazil. And I fell in love with the community. You can see my host family and I there at the top. I then returned the summer after to lead that same program, and that's when I kind of got really just enamored with the Brazilian education space. So in that second summer, I noticed a really interesting trend in the rural education space there in Valinhos. Out of nowhere, students were suddenly attending school for really long periods of time. In the past, the traditional Brazilian model has been that students will attend for 4 hours a day, either in the morning, in the afternoon, or the evening, depending on where the school is located. And there would be no real continuance after that period of the day. Suddenly, though, in these rural zones, kids were in school for 7, 8, 9 hours a day, and I didn't really know what to make of it. You know, as I was trying to implement our own education program, we were trying to see how we could best fit in. So I tried to dive into this new program, or what I thought was a program, and see what was happening. What I found was a program called Mais Educação, which means more education in Portuguese, and is basically what it sounds like. It's a program to extend the education outside of the regular 4-hour day and really improve the education quality in Brazil. So one of the interesting things, though, in this education space at the time was that the implementation is not at all equal across all zones. In this one zone, actually, there are 3 different schools that began to adopt this new program, and each one of them implemented it in a completely different way. One of the schools, for example, would just take a bunch of kids and shove them into a gymnasium and have them play soccer all day, whereas another school would bring in capoeira instructors and arts instructors and all these really cool people to stimulate kids and get them excited about education. What I actually noticed anecdotally, though, was that the students still, even in this really exciting school with awesome programming, tended to reject this program. And I wasn't really sure why. There were some kids, of course, who were really embracing it, who were staying the whole day, who ended up winning statewide competitions in track and field with this extra practice, but others just weren't having it and stayed at home. So after one of our program days there in the community in the rural zone, I decided to stop and ask one of the students that we were working with why it was that she would go to our program during the morning, but then would not stay for the rest of the programs offered during that morning period of extra classes. And she just looked at me and she very simply said, what's the point? And I thought that was an incredibly profound answer that indicated so many things about education just in general. And I started asking myself, what was the point of this program? You know, why wasn't it being implemented? Of course, policymakers and administrators have some view and some idea behind this, but in the eyes of the community, what did they think was the point of this? And more importantly, how is this aligning or disconnecting with what they thought about education as a whole? So, just as a brief background, this whole full education movement, as it's called in Brazil, began way before my experience in 2013. It actually finds its roots in the most recent Brazilian Constitution, 1988, where the Brazilian government explicitly said that education is a right of all citizens. That idea was then kind of operationalized in something called LDB in 1996, which specifically said how the government should be acting on this goal of universal and quality education for all. One of the things that it specifically mandated was the extension of the school day from the traditional 4 hours to 7 hours over the period of the next 20 years. So from 1996 to the present, there have been a lot of different programs that have surged, but none of them have really stuck. The only real federal program that has come up was a product of Education Decree 17 by the Ministry of Education in 2007 that created what is called Mais Educação, again, more education, which is what I studied this summer. The Mais Educação decree says that students must stay in school for 7 hours a day if they were to receive this federal funding, and it is specifically targeting schools with a low score on something called the IDEB, which is the IDEB down there at the bottom. This is a score that it's an aggregate of standardized test scores, graduation rates, and grade completion rates. So it's trying to track how students are doing in school in general, and what the education space is like in individual schools. The score I ended up working and focusing my research was called IMEB Dona Carolina de Oliveira Sigristi. In Brazil's rural community. It was named after a local educator, that's why the name is so long. And it's a very small school, only 128 students, grades 1 through 9. Those are 2 pictures of the school there. And its IDEB score is 3.9. The goal of IDEB is a 6. That's kind of what Brazil considers internationally competitive. And the national average is around 4.7, 4.8. So this school is struggling a little bit in that regard, at least on this federal metric. So looking at what the actual program entails, the interesting thing to note is that though federal funding is being provided for this program, there is not much structure behind it. There's not much accountability behind it either. Schools are basically given this federal lump sum to do what they want. as long as they conform to one very specific requirement, which is that they must select 4 of these 10 socio-educational areas, as it's called in Portuguese, and develop activities around them using community educators who are paid just a modest stipend for their work, and work in the either before school or after school period, depending on what the normal school day is for the community. Sigristi, as it turned out, happened to choose sports and leisure, arts and culture, and communication. The 4th one, academic support, they chose is mandatory that every school has to fulfill, but that kind of takes a lot of forms, and that's a whole other discussion for another time. So as you can see up here, these are a few of the example activities that the school has been providing. One is marching band, there's theater, there's actually a circus class where kids are like swinging from ropes and like learning how to be acrobats. It's really, really cool. I unfortunately didn't get to participate. There's track and field, there's sewing, there's music and guitar classes. So to explore how community members were understanding the value of this program, I went into the rural zone and I conducted grounded ethnographic research. What this meant in the first place was that I actually was a participant in the program as an instructor. I was studying abroad all spring semester in the same community, independent status, with the same host family that I was living with for the past 3 summers now. And I would go every single morning on a bus, 4 a.m., arrive there, teach for 4 hours a morning in this mais educação period. So that was kind of my one period of the ethnographic research. The other period was when I was actually going into the community and doing interviews with community members. So that meant that I was meeting community members where they were. This is where the outdoor component kind of comes in. As you can see, we're doing like a lot of trekking and hiking there. It's a rural community, so I was doing interviews in fig fields and strawberry fields. I was helping mothers wash their laundry as I was interviewing them about education. It was a really cool experience and involved a lot of walking. I actually kind of developed a posse of students who helped me through this. Of course, after permission from their parents was given. They ended up escorting me around. As you can see, in the bottom right, those are the kids that I would hang out with, and they'd take me around the neighborhood. It was a massive area, lots of diversity, and it was really fun. So the 5 general buckets of questions that I asked parents and teachers and administrators and students are up there, but the 3 ones to focus on for this presentation are the fundamental value of education. So I was asking pretty much, hey parents, why do you send your kids to school, if it was a parent? The second one is the value of mais educação. So I would ask a student, for example, why do you go to school all day and stay there all day? What's the point? And then finally, the future of mais educação. So what do you want to see from it in the future? So what I ended up finding principally was a framework for actually discussing and analyzing the community concepts of education. It's something that I had never come across in literature. I didn't really know how to handle all this data I was getting. And it was very, very interesting to see that very quickly, actually my 3rd interview, I noticed that all community members were using very similar language and similar ideas to describe values of education. They would either orient themselves toward the future or toward the present. People who oriented themselves toward the future when discussing values would talk about what a program or what education would do for themselves or for their children, for their communities down the line. An example quote is up there. Present-oriented people would tend to discuss things as they are today. The most common refrain there was, it's better to have kids off the streets, out of the house, and in school, and that's what we want from education. So once I kind of had this framework established, I then tried to categorize all the respondents' information that I got. What I ended up finding was kind of 4 broad themes. The first is that, without fail, every single community member, parent, teacher, administrator, all that good stuff, they oriented themselves toward the future when discussing the basic value of education. So that means that every single one of them said that the point of education as a whole is to prepare students to be something down the line. Interestingly then, if you look at this little chart down here, the vast majority of parents and students oriented themselves toward the present when discussing mais educação. So they thought that the value of education was something in the future, but the value of this program was something that was very much in the present. As we see up here, it's better to be inside in the school than out on the streets. So the third kind of takeaway here is that administrators, again, without fail, all said that the value of mais educação was in the future. So that is that the people who are actually implementing these policies and bringing this theory into practice are saying that we're doing this because we want something down the line. The final thing that I thought was very interesting, looking at kind of the future bucket here, is that when asked if they would change anything, the respondents who oriented themselves toward the future when thinking of mais educação overwhelmingly thought that mais educação had a lot to fix. Those who thought that its value was found in the present, on the other hand, thought that it was fine as it is in general. So there's obviously a lot to unpack here. I have a lot of data, and it's not going to all fit into this 12-minute presentation. But very quickly, I just want you guys to take a look at these two sets of quotes up here, and think about one kind of larger question, which is, why did community members interpret Maestra Casano as they did, which was in the present, when they themselves oriented education as a whole in the future? What could account for that? Some things that came up were the ideas that maybe the program was just not being marketed correctly. Maybe the administrators were not communicating effectively what the purpose was of the program, and that's where the breakdown was. Perhaps on the other hand, the program is just aligned with the present. Maybe the vision of the people who were actually conceiving this program is not the accurate one. We don't know. But I think that no matter what, the major takeaway here is that there is a major communication breakdown between all these different sets of stakeholders in what they saw as the value for education and the value for this program. So looking at these quotes on the left, you kind of see a slightly disturbing trend emerge where this is administrators and teachers are consistently saying that students and parents believe that the value of education is in the present. They don't really care, they just want their kids off the street, things like that. Whereas we saw in the last slide that pretty much every single parent, or actually every single parent, not pretty much, every single parent and student said that the value was in the future. On the other side, we see over here that there was no community participation in implementing this program in this after-school period. So again, we don't have time to discuss all this, but I would just like to end with thinking about kind of how this can be used as a rallying cry. So I think that no matter what, no matter how we want to interpret these data, no matter how much we want to believe in administrators or believe in parents or teachers, at the end of the day, we need to see a methodology that actually involves community participation when implementing programs like this in the future. So before all else, we need to sit down and actually have a frank discussion about what the purpose of education is and what the purpose of this program is and how best we can align this program to the goals of the community. That's something that did not necessarily exist in this case, and something that I think future work is going to have to be done to identify to basically see whether this is a unique case in Sigirishi, whether it's applicable to the other rural schools, and maybe if there's some psychological or curricular components that are adding to this. So that is my presentation. I just wanted to, of course, thank the Explorer Fund, David and Andretta's family, the CSJ for all their support, my mother, of course. I would like to, of course, all these people here I can't even talk about. These are all people from the school community who supported me all summer, all semester. I mean, this was like 6 months of my life that were the best ever. So, yeah, thank you to everyone who made this a possibility, and I look forward to speaking with you guys more about what I found.